I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We are very excited to share out with y'all the kind of final report out from our year-long diary study in partnership with Lena Blackstock. I have a quick update, just like a quick overview for folks, and then I'll turn it over. Go ahead and get started. Okay. So as many of you know, because you have been with us throughout this entire year-long process, CPE received a grant from the Lumina Foundation last spring to begin a year-long project as a part of the Great Admissions Redesign. And that was a wonderful opportunity for us to come together as partners and really focus on our admissions process from the student perspective. One of the mantras of the Great Admissions Redesign was, complexity is the friend of the privileged. And while we think about admissions usually just from our own institutional perspective and how can we make our own process easier for students to navigate, sometimes we forget the perspective of the student who is maybe navigating multiple processes and is really facing everyone's individual process and expectations and standards. And so what we decided to do is really focus on the student. We brought all of our public institutions together, KCTCS, our 8 public universities in Kentucky, the Kentucky Department of Education, our Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, our Gear Up partners, and many others, to really focus on what can we do together that none of us can achieve on our own. Our goal was to alleviate student stresses and elevate student joy during their college admissions journey. A few specifics about the kind of focus that our project took. We really focused on that high school straight to post-secondary transition. There's a lot of work happening at CPE and in Kentucky around the adult learner re-engagement, around transfer partnerships. But in this particular case, we wanted to focus on the first transition from high school to our post-secondary institutions. We completed 4 discovery projects to get a really good sense of our current state picture. We dug deep into the data around dual credit experiences as well as college readiness, and what those kind of told us about matriculation, about retention and completion. We explored artificial intelligence and what is new in the field and how are people using this to create more proactivity, automation, transparency, and simplification in the admissions journey. We did focus group with boots on the ground college admissions staff members from each of our universities to really get a sense of what they were seeing when they're working with students and families as some of the major barriers or questions, concerns, and opportunities. And then, of course, this is the report out of a 12-month diary study with nearly 50 high school to college students in Kentucky. As a part of this process, our partners really emerged and focused on 5 big priority areas. Transcripts came up as a big barrier and a very complicated process for students. Dual credit was identified as a very high impact experience that we want to increase access to. Financial aid, as you all know, financing college, affording college, how to pay for college, that is one of the biggest questions and concerns that students and families have. Communications around what to do, when to do it, how to do it is very critical. And then as we emerged through this process, we really did focus in on the seamless transfer. And so that became kind of a 5th priority that emerged. But just as a note, that really got started after we had already kicked off and designed the student journey mapping, the student diary study. And so our direct admissions into KCTCS from high school is not a big focus of the diary map, although many of the feedback and lessons learned are certainly relevant. So I do want to take time and really thank all of the partners who dedicated, even more than 12 months of working together to kind of come up with our plan. Some of the most high priority pieces of this puzzle that we are going to continue focusing on over the next 18 months include developing a transcript exchange for sharing those dual credit transcripts from institution to institution. Very excited about this to remove that barrier for students. We're partnering with KIA through the Futurity website to digitize the college scholarship database in Kentucky, and that will hopefully increase access to many scholarships for our students. We're also going to work on improving final high school transcripts and how our college partners receive those. We're very interested in the partnership between KCTCS and our universities and how we can more proactively help students in their admissions and transfer journeys to our institutions. And then finally, working with our high school counselors as well as admissions staff on some key messaging that we can do as a state to help increase awareness, knowledge, and access to post-secondary education. We have many other strategies that are also important, but those were the top 5 that we're working on, and just very excited to continue working with partners as we continue to prioritize and roll out our work. Before I turn it over, I just want to know, just kind of mention again that we're doing all of this together, and that I know admissions is often a space where we feel more competition. But when we put our students at the center and their experiences, and we try to kind of work together where we feel comfortable and where we can, we will increase access to education for all of our students, to all of our institutions. So really excited for the work our partners have dedicated to this. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Lena Blackstock, who led our project of the student journey mapping, and she is going to share a final report out and reveal our journey maps for our institutional partners and kind of go through all of the wonderful ways that these will hopefully help you in your individual work to increase access.
All right, thank you, Lily. Let me make sure I set up the screen share correctly here because we do have some student voice videos and I want to make sure that those are going to work for everybody. Lily, can you see my screen okay? Can you give me a thumbs up? You're good? Okay, great. All right, and then I think I've met most everybody on this call, but it's nice to see everybody again. Like Lily said, we are at the final share out, which feels crazy because in one way, this year went by so fast and I've learned so much from these students. And just a note too, that in addition to the deck that I will be sharing and the journey map that shows an aggregate view of the experience, but also the individual campus specific maps, we also have a lot of additional context and insights and videos in the appendix because there's so much data that I've gathered from these students, and I wanted to make sure you all can kind of hear firsthand some of their experiences and the student voices as you go about your work. So like I said, I will do a really brief just review of the study goal. I won't go through all of it again since we've met multiple times, and in the last interim, you have seen some of the initial phases and steps that we've identified that students go through. But I have included in the appendix details about the study timeline, the participant information, like their demographics and stuff like that. So if you're curious about that, I'll put all that in the appendix, and I'll also include my email. So there's always a way to reach me if you have additional questions. I'll share some guiding principles that came out of this study and the journey maps like Lily mentioned, and then we'll also have some time for conversation and reflection at the end. All right. So like Lily said, just as a reminder, the goal of the research project was to understand the student experience with the 8 public Kentucky University admissions journeys and explore how we might leverage a deeper understanding of the student experience as a means to alleviate their stresses and elevate their joy as they go through that journey. Quick reminder on the approach, we started last year with 4 students on a pilot project. I believe that was for a month of diary studies. And then in October, we started a year-long, or September, we started a year-long study where the students completed weekly tasks and reflection diaries every week. We also did 2 to 3 co-creation workshops with the students where they not only shared in more detail their experiences, but they also ideated together on how we could improve the experience, which was a really fun exercise. And then the activities ended in August, and now we are here sharing the final results. So as I mentioned, we've had intermittent share outs. Some of this will be familiar. I won't be going through all the things that you've seen already. I just wanted to highlight and as a main goal, share the final journey maps, play some of the videos from the research showing the voices, and then also walk you through the guiding principles that came out of this research. So with that, through the work, these themes have bubbled up, and I leverage guiding principles to to use as guardrails as you go through the continuing work that Lily outlined. So these really emerge from the research and represent 5 dimensions of how students want to interact with actors and systems throughout their experiences. And so they can be a framework or just a reference point as you gauge ideas, future concepts, and related experiences, or any process improvement work, especially when you're considering the opportunities that exist at each phase. So our 5 guiding principles that came out of this research, and some of you may notice they mirror the Lumina Admission Redesign principles. I think Lily mentioned proactivity, simplicity, transparency, and automate it. So those are definitely mirrored in these principles, but they didn't inform the principles. These naturally emerged from the research with the students. So we have one of the guiding principles is to set clear expectations, providing students and families with transparent, upfront information about all requirements, deadlines, costs, and processes throughout the entire journey so that we eliminate surprises and confusion. We can enable smooth decision-making by creating systems and resources that help students make informed choices about their academic future without feeling overwhelmed or under-supported, especially during those really critical decision points. Third, we can prioritize clear and timely communication. So just establishing consistent multi-channel systems that keep students informed about the application status, but also next steps without overwhelming them. There is such a thing as too much communication as well. So without overwhelming them with those confusing messages. The last 2 I think are really important. Again, having kind of lived in this digital space and the workshops with the students for the past 12 months, considering the emotional state is really important. Recognizing that the admissions process is an emotionally charged journey for them. It involves major life transitions, family separation anxiety, financial stresses, and identity formation at this critical stage. So considering that, especially in some of these key phases and moments, is important. And then, of course, offering support, which happens in many different facets, but just thinking through how we provide accessible support systems that meet the students where they're at and addresses their individual needs throughout each of the stages of the admissions journey. All right, so I'll walk quickly through the admissions journey maps that you will be receiving, and then I'll dive into some of the phases and the student voices. So this is the aggregate view of the student journey maps that you will all receive as a PDF. This was collected, we collected 49 voices total across the 2 phases. And so this is the view at the state level, and it's based on recognizing that they aren't just applying to one school, like Lily mentioned. In fact, I think the average was about 5 colleges per student that they applied to. And so you will all receive this artifact that shows that aggregate view, in addition to your individual campus-specific journey maps. And so these are a tool to use within your work on your campuses. I think I mentioned for phase 2, we specifically recruited 3 students per university, and we leveraged those experiences to understand better the unique experiences at each college level, where those students shared their personal experiences that we hope can help you in the innovative work that you already do on your own campuses. And then that aggregate view focuses on the shared opportunities and what we can do together that none of us can achieve alone. So it's meant to help you think about the student stresses, their mental load, as they go through the processes and tasks, especially spread out across many universities. And the goal is not uniformity. I think Lily mentioned it as well, but it's just about helping our students have a predictable experience and help alleviate their stresses as they go through some of those critical moments. All right, I included this here. I'm not going to go through this, but this is just a how to read that you can reference as you're getting used to kind of applying the journey maps and what the different aspects of it are. Most of you are probably familiar with these tools or similar tools, but I wanted to make one note on number 7 down here. So this is on the aggregate view. I have included admissions redesign opportunities that are leveraging the work that you all are already doing and have been doing. So those are opportunities that require collaboration across K through 12 districts, higher ed institutions, state agencies, and nonprofits. On the individual maps, all of these will be the same, except for the admissions redesign opportunities will just be campus-specific opportunities. Again, specific improvements within the admissions journey that you can do based on the insights and learnings from the research. And I'll pause in between. So if there are like critical questions, you can drop them in the chat and Lily can pause me, but we will have time to discuss these as well. Okay, let's dive in. We started looking at some of the findings in the interim share out. So I will walk through the phases, the stresses, and the joys at a higher level, but I will also talk through the guiding principles to consider during each phase, the emotional journeys or the roller coaster, as the students talk about it, that they go through. And then I will share some brief video clips from some of the students who have given their consent for me to share. Bear with me a little bit on the audio as the levels vary in each audio clip because these students self-submitted the videos. So some of them will be a little bit quieter, but I'll try to even it out as much as I can. Again, I'll include a link to all the videos so you have access to them afterwards as well. All right, so the journey maps at a high level, again, are structured from top to bottom where you have the journey phase. These are all using the students' phrasing and words, followed by the steps, actions, and touch points, as well as the student's emotional journey as they go through it. Again, this is the aggregate view. And then underneath it, you'll see supporting moments of stress and moments of joy for each step, as well as the guiding principles to consider at each step. Of course, the guiding principles apply to the entire journey, but there are different focuses that I would recommend taking as you look at those different phases. And then again, below it on each journey map, you'll have the opportunities for your campus. Okay, you'll recognize some of this if you were at the interim share or have seen any of the artifacts, but phase one is really about identifying what they're interested in, researching the entire spectrum of majors, colleges, careers, considering location, considering personal interests, considering program quality. They start conversations and they do initial college visits at this stage as well. So for step one, where they're researching colleges and exploring options, and then for step two, which is see it, weighing the options and considering choices, the guiding principles at the beginning here really, I think, lean heavily towards setting clear expectation, prioritizing clear and timely communication, and enabling smooth decision-making, because that is such a overwhelming, exciting, but also overwhelming moment where there's almost too much and it's all so fuzzy that's the part that feels overwhelming. And then of course, offering support and considering the emotional state and that initial step is important. So in an aggregate view, students experience that initial wave of ups and downs, from curiosity and excitement of discovering new opportunities and feeling supported in the dream it phase, to some stress and uncertainty that bubbles up again in the aggregate view from the decision-making, lack of transparency that they're feeling, and some inconsistent communication in the see it phase. Some moments of joy and moments of stress. Again, you have seen most of these, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but just an example in the dream it phase that I think stood out across all student experiences was just the appreciation for programs like Gear Up and college prep boot camps that help them imagine what's possible came up a lot as a moment of joy. And in the see it, there is definitely a moment of stress when there is a lack of transparency and unclear requirements as they go through that research, which just creates stress and frustration for them. So I'll be playing some video clips. Just one more note on that. Each step has supporting video clips. And I only included videos of students who explicitly gave me their consent to use their videos and their likelihood, right, shows their faces in these final share-outs with you. So you will see some students multiple times, and you will not see all students because not everybody gave consent for this. However, all students gave consent in the study to share their learnings via an alias. So in the appendix, there's tons and tons of quotes from all 49 students with their appendix. But, and we leverage all those voices for the final deliverables. But again, I wanted to make sure that you knew that the reason that you will see multiple students multiple times is because we've made sure that they can give their consent for showing their faces as they're going through this vulnerable experience and sharing their insights with you. Okay, so this is the first video for the Dream It. The first video is the quietest one, so I'll crank up the audio, but you might have to lean in a bit and then it'll get better.
Our second semester, so last spring semester of our junior year, and we kind of started preparing, getting into the mindset of like applying to college. And then over the summer we had about I think it was 1 week, so 5 days where we had 2 to 3 hours each day of like working on college applications and learning and like really digging into like what we wanted to write about for our personal essay. And then we talked with admission counselors about like our progress so far, and they read over it and gave us some tips and stuff like that.
I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a mess compared to all my friends because I'm 5 or 6 weeks into my senior year and I still have no idea where I'm going to college or what I'm even going into it for.
So the spectrum of emotions there, again, just a couple of highlights from a couple students as they go through that dream it stage. And then as we go into see it, which is where they're kind of weighing the options, considering the choices, actively researching colleges, attending college fairs, and just kind of moving to more tangible goals. Here's some examples from the students.
The main thing that I felt was not transparent in regards to the college admission process was the deadlines for applications. Prior to this school year, I was under the impression that applying for college occurred later in the school year, and I was not prepared to receive emails from colleges on August 1st telling me that their application was open.
I just found out last week that some of the dual credit classes I had took doesn't cover all that I need for the college I want to go to. And then when I tried to actually list out, oh, maybe the classes that could cover this, that I could take next semester, my school doesn't provide the classes that I would need.
So again, there's more quotes, there's more videos, but those are just kind of some initial views of what students go through as they go through that first phase. At that point, they move into the second phase, which is where students apply to colleges and then they wait for acceptance, which I would say is probably one of the biggest ups and downs as they go through figuring out how to pay for college, applying for college, and waiting for college. There's a lot of emotions tied up in this kind of middle piece. There's also, I would say this is the phase where there's the most back and forth. It's the least linear as students potentially discover, right? Like the financial aid is not working out how I thought it was. So I'm going to change course, or, you know, I might not be able to attend this college because X, Y, and Z reason, or I might change my major after conversation. So this is where the most kind of circular changes happen as they go through, right? This journey that we're showing as a linear journey. So that's them addressing college affordability, that's them completing the application process and then waiting for responses. And I just want to call out that wait for it as a step is really intentional, because even though it's a small moment on the radar for the process itself, as you look at what gets delivered from universities and from other partners, for the students, that's a really critical phase that brings a lot of emotions with it. And so when you're looking at pay for it, apply for it, and wait for it, there is definitely the need for clear and timely communications and clear expectations across all three of those steps. And then when you look at pay for it, definitely the emotional state and offering additional support, because it is such an emotional, but also it's such a critical logistical step that, right, if that doesn't work out, college doesn't work out for many of them. And so there's the emotional piece and the kind of tactical piece that are balled up together. And so I think making support available in different ways seems like a really critical piece in the pay for it, especially, and then in the wait for it again. So again, in an aggregate view, these look slightly different on each of the individual journey maps, but in an aggregate view, this is the roller coaster ride of emotions. And again, right, like the pay for it doesn't go all the way down. And that's because for some students that have a clear track to their scholarships, you know, based on merit potentially, they feel less stressed, or they might have support from family that they can fall back on. So for them, it's not such a big deal. But for other students, it's right, this is the make or break step. So for most students, it dips in the pay for it step as they deal with the complexities of financial aid, scholarships, and just the anxiety around the cost that they're aware of. And then for most of them, applying to colleges and getting clarity on where they want to go is an exciting step. It's kind of that like weight off the shoulders that they describe. They're like, okay, I think I figured out. I think I know. There's like a moment of like, okay, I can move forward. I have a direction. And then, right, there is problems that students run into with transcripts, for example, or technical issues with platforms and applications that then can cause frustration as they go through that application process. And then in the wait for it, I did see a lot of students face uncertainty, just doubt, self-doubt, doubt in the process, doubt in themselves. A lot of students talk about, I did this and this, and I think maybe I did it wrong. So when things don't go as planned in that step, they often take the blame for it, even if it might be a problem with the platform or, just something getting lost in communication. And so I think just that uncertainty, waiting for acceptance letters and just wishing for better communication in some instances is definitely a reason that in the wait for it, I think it dips fairly low. But then there is lots of mention of just getting support and encouragement, whether that's family, admissions counselors, guidance counselors, anybody in their immediate sphere of influence helps them work through that phase. And then the moments of stress and joy, again, not a surprise. One of I think the main stress moments in the pay for it phase is just worries about the cost of college, and future debt comes up a lot in almost all of the journeys. In the applying for it, I alluded to this just a second ago, but one moment of joy is definitely having counselors and staff that help walk them through the application, answer questions, just being available in a way that they feel like help is there if I need it, because it feels like such a, there's so much pent up stuff to this moment of application that they've already been through, that once they make it to that point, little kind of hiccups feel like really big problems. But if there's support or just a sense that support is available, it doesn't seem like such a big deal. And then in the wait for it, again, I think just that lag between application submission and the decision caused a lot of anxiety. They talk about sleepless nights. They talk about just that uncertainty of, is this going to happen or not? Am I going to go to college or not? Am I going to get into my top school or not? And, there's a lot that they kind of imagine hinging on that single decision. All right, so here's one short clip for the pay for it step from one of the students.
Okay, so how I feel about financial aid. Well, I know for me anyway that I'm not going to get much financial aid based on my parents' income, which I think it's a little bit strange, because I feel like if I move out of my parents' house and I'm 18 and I'm independent, I feel like that it shouldn't matter what my parents make. And being up to 24, it's kind of, I don't like it being like that, because I feel like that, I mean, heck, I can graduate college before I'm 24, and then I have no financial ability to be able to go to college,
College is really expensive, like really, 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 really expensive. It's I really don't want to be in debt when I graduate from college or whatever.
That's some for the apply for it, where they're just tackling the application process, filling out forms, writing essays, tracking deadlines and requirements.
When filling out and submitting the applications, the hardest part was technical difficulties. This very well could have been an issue on my end, but when I was filling out one of my college applications, I didn't complete it all in one sitting, and I saved the information before I logged out, but certain documents I uploaded, such as an unofficial transcript, did not save. So I had to add those attachments multiple times and check to make sure they were actually there before submitting my application.
There's like a lot of stuff. It's very confusing. It's very, very tedious. I've been trying to break it down, and I have to get a lot of like external resources, which is understandable for an honors program, but it would be really nice if everything was just like short, sweet, and simple. They like are very repetitive, and it's just kind of like overwhelming a little bit.
And then there's the wait for it stage, where they're just, again, waiting for acceptance and rejection letters.
But during this whole process, my mom was involved, just having an adult, someone who's already been through this journey to kind of lead my way in a sense.
So there's not a lot of videos that I have for the steps from students that gave their consent, even though there's a lot in this one, but I did include this one because I think it shows a little bit of, even though that's a very low dip in the journey map emotionally for pretty much all students, I think the main factor in making that not so difficult is having a support system around them. And that can come in the form of family, parents, but also, school support system, counselors, advisors, all that kind of stuff. All right, and then phase 3 is making a choice and going forward where they commit to college, they finalize logistical preparations and get ready for that transition. And then I'm not calling it phase 4, but I have included kind of a final step, which is just the journey begins and they start classes in college life. So we have go for it, which is where they're making decisions, continuing exploration. So I wanted to include this one and highlight that yes, most of them make their final choice. They accept offers, they submit deposits, they start prepping for enrollment, housing, orientation. There's a lot in this step, but this is also one of those steps where I notice for most students, it is about committing and getting ready. But some students at this step still make big changes, whether that's changing majors or even colleges or even deciding to not go to college at all, changing their path to maybe pursue a career in the military or, you know, taking a gap year. So it is, even though we're pretty far along in the journey at this step, I did notice quite a few of the students still making pretty big decisions and changes. So in that initial view, we had kind of some arrows that pointed back. It's where it becomes, for some students, they might go back to exploration and start over thinking about what's the right path for me. And then you have do it, which is again, that they're ready for college. They are packing up. They're saying goodbye to high school, to their families. There's a lot of excitement. They are moving, organizing their dorm supplies, finalizing their housing, prepping for the classes on campus. And then finally, there's the college journey begins, right? So again, not a phase, but they're in it. They are celebrating, they are reflecting, they're anticipating what these opportunities might be. For they're either moving to campus, or for others, it might mean figuring out routes to commute and like testing those routes with their parents, because there's a lot of anxiety about that too, new environments, and then starting classes. So I think in this phase, definitely the considering the emotional state and offering support sits across all 3 of these. That's where a lot of the emotions, even though they're less, I think, uncertainty about is it going to happen, now it's like, what is it going to look like, all the details, like am I allowed to bring my fish on campus, like there's a lot of those kind of questions that come out here. So I think offering support and considering all the big things that are going on emotionally is important. And then I would say in the first 2, you know, a little bit more tactically, as they go for it, enable that decision making, smooth decision making, providing the systems for that. And then in the do it phase, I think there's definitely a need for clear and timely communications and setting clear expectations as they go through that initial kind of setting foot into a new world, as you may. I do feel like in this final phase, when you look at the aggregate view of students, and a lot of this is right through the app where they submit a task and they actually ranked their emotion every week, but it's also them mapping it separately in a workshop with me where they mapped each their journey and I took an aggregate view. It does seem like at this stage it evens out a bit more as students prepare for that final step into college. Making the decisions for their college, for their majors, and that new life phase feels exciting as they are in that go for it phase. Especially for those, again, who receive support and guidance throughout. That is just like the underlying, I think, deciding factor that pushes that line up is just that underlying support in whatever shape or form that may be. And then for some students, the do it phase brings some lingering financial worries about college, as well as some struggles with schedules, scheduling classes during orientation. And then again, some dual credit transfer issues come up at this stage as well. So that's where it dips a little bit lower there. And then as they move closer to starting classes and transition to college life, once they're in it, their excitement grows and they feel empowered in that new independence and that journey that they're on. So some moments for the different phases and the go for it. I would say one of the main moments of joy is definitely choosing a school and officially committing. It just feels like such an empowering, joyful moment for the students. In the do it phase, I just mentioned one of the stresses that came up is frustration with credit transfer and preparedness. Many students across all the journeys really talked about learning the dual credit courses that might not transfer. You heard it in the quote as well. And so that leads to regret, frustration, and just them doubting their academic preparedness. And I think, again, a lot of students take that as their fault, which is difficult sometimes. And then for the in it phase, I think the biggest moment of joy that I heard in one form or another is just that hope for personal growth, independence, self-discovery as they're on this new college journey. Let me play a clip for the Go For It, where they're making decisions and moving towards college life.
And then I actually got a handwritten card from somebody in the major that I was looking at going into, just talking about how if I have any questions, just to reach out, and how it's a really good program and that I'd really like it. And I thought that was great. It really meant a lot to me that somebody took the time to write that out. And
I've gotten accepted at 4 or 5 colleges so far, and they each want you to pay $200 in order to save your spot. I wish I knew about that, because I would have tried to save more money or whatever. My mom was surprised too, she graduated high school, she didn't go to college.
And then students move into the do it phase, which is that combination of nerves and excitements, saying goodbye to high school friends, family, and preparing to move.
Like I was getting an email a day, whether it was about, orientation or, hey, don't forget to sign up for this camp that's going on. But after orientation happened, I got a thanks for coming to orientation email, and then after that I got nothing.
I did have a panic attack yesterday because I am very nervous about leaving home, leaving all my pets, leaving all my friends, leaving my family, and just being alone for the first time, being away from everything that I'm used to. It really is kind of scary.
I received an email saying my housing portal was open on a Monday night. I had some trouble logging into the portal, but was able to complete the application on either Tuesday or Wednesday. I was under the impression that I would be able to reach out to people and find someone whose personality matched mine, who I wanted to be roommates with. I thought that we would then be assigned a time to select a room. However, I received another email on Thursday saying that I was able to select a room. Although I had reached out to someone about being roommates, I hadn't received a response yet. I didn't want to miss out on getting the room I wanted, so I chose a room with a random roommate. I wish that the system had been designed differently so I knew exactly what to do and the timeline. I wish I'd been able to communicate with other people and not have to choose between getting the room I want and choosing my roommate after getting to know them.
Sorry, her audio is quiet, but hopefully you could hear it. If not, again, you can play it separately on your computers. And then finally, the in it, lots of emotions, feeling ready for this new life phase for them, not just a step in a journey, but a new phase in their lives.
Also really excited to get involved in all of these different clubs and activities that involve student resources and let you connect more to the people around you.
I hope that I get to learn more things about myself that I don't know about now, and maybe be more experience different things, because right now I still don't know exactly what I want to do with my future. I just picked a major. I'm good at math, so I just picked accounting, but I don't really know what I want to do.
All right, so again, there's a lot of additional information in the deck, and we'll have a conversation about it if there's questions, thoughts. Like I mentioned, I also have my email at the end. If there's any questions about the research at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. If there's a little question about, hey, can you check this quote, or, what was this about? Definitely feel free to reach out to me. Before we go into the conversation, I just wanted to leave this with you because these are a few questions that over the years in doing this work that I found really useful when using journey maps as a tool, especially when they're a tool for, improvement at a targeted level, but also for collaboration. We can't do it alone. And so keeping in mind that the student voice should guide resource allocation, risk-taking, and continuous improvement, these are some questions that you can use as you use the tools. One is who owns which part of the journey. And I think that's the beauty of breaking the experience out into steps, but from the student perspective, because it may help allocate or find ownership across the different internal systems and processes that exist to deliver that experience. And so who owns which part of the journey is a good question to keep in mind as a group as you work through these things. How to decide what to fix first, right? Prioritization. It seems obvious, but it is an important piece where I've taken even journey maps and just circled parts of the steps that seem to be the biggest pain points for the end customer, which is the student in this case. And how do we prioritize resources and focus there? And then, right, what evidence do we need before allocating budget or resources or whatever it may be to fix or support, the student's experience? And just as a reminder, this is a qualitative study. We did have a sample of almost 50 students, but it is a qualitative study. And so there might be instances where you're looking at one of the pain points or, one of the strategies that are already being pursued through the grade admissions redesign. And you might say, hey, I feel like we have a good understanding of the context and the lived experience and the qualitative data that we need to understand the problem at a deeper level. But we might want to do a survey to dig deeper into what's really happening here at our university, right? So thinking about what evidence you might need to dig deeper or to actually allocate sources, budget, all that stuff. And then lastly, I think this is actually one of the more important ones, is how will improvements be sustained once they're made and by whom? And I think especially when we look at journeys that cut across a lot of different organizations, teams, institutions, it's not easy to make these changes, but once the changes are made, right, there is a big improvement. But if we want to think about sustainably improving this experience for all students, just keeping in mind as you're leveraging this tool, how can that improvement be sustained as we go through? And I think that's it. And Lily, I will stop screen sharing. Actually, I'll leave it up and we can just do discussion. Actually, I'll stop share.
Thank you. Well, I know that 50 students across their very unique journeys is an incredible amount of information to synthesize and to pull out themes. And I want to thank you so much for how much time and real effort and energy you put into this. I think the aggregate journey map is hopefully going to be very helpful for us as kind of an admissions redesign group to think about. But I'm also very excited for each of our universities to receive their custom journey maps with kind of custom recommendations based on what the students shared about their experience coming to your institution. So there's a both and here, what are our individual updates, refinements, just awareness that we get to have like through this custom journey map, but then also together, and what is some of the things that we might want to consider at the aggregate or at a collaborative level. So this is just some time for us to talk. We have Lena for just a few more minutes on this project, but I'm interested to know if there were any kind of key takeaways that people are thinking about based on Lena's presentation. If there was anything surprising that you hadn't really thought about, maybe from the student's perspective, or just as an institutional barrier that, hasn't really come up on your radar. And then, I'm also very interested in those guiding principles as a framework for us to kind of maybe do a little self-reflection at our own institutions, but then also as a state, wanting all students to have hopefully seamless access to our institutions, and thinking about those guiding principles and where our opportunities may lie to enhance our process. So just happy to open it up. If anyone wants to come off mute, if you want to post anything in the chat, if you'd like to raise your hand, would love to hear any kind of initial thoughts or reflections. Hey, Miles.
Hey, thank you so much for this. This was a really amazing and comprehensive review that really puts the student experience in the driver's seat. And so I'm really interested and intrigued, Nina, particularly, and anybody who's been a part of this broad process, just what were some of the obstacles that maybe you faced or didn't face when trying to get student engagement? Particularly we're at a moment where everybody is jockeying for student information, and we know that their voice is important, but they often don't maybe fully realize how important their voice is. And so, doing stuff like this previously, we'd have students join and they'd drop off or something like that, or they wouldn't give, those nuggets of information that are really great. So if you could just kind of speak to the complexities of all of the stakeholders involved and what you kind of did to get through that.
I love this question so much. It's such a great question. And it is, there's definitely was some ups and downs and some obstacles, I'll say. I will say first, and we had another slide that we can put up too, but I had incredible support from not just CPE and Lily and team, but also the Gear Up team specifically, who leveraged their network in reaching students, helping us recruit students for the study, understanding the diverse demographic considerations to make sure we have a broad representation across all those factors. So definitely couldn't have done it without Gear Up, first of all. Second of all, there's a few things we did intentionally. So one, the diary study is digitally through an application called Indemo. So it's a platform that is built specifically for qualitative diary studies, research. And the thing that's powerful about it is that once the students sign up, I have them in my dashboard and I can send them reminders directly as an app pop-up, and they can respond in the moment or they can respond at the end of the week. And it's right, especially for this generation, it's very social media-like. They just pop it open, they record a little video and they hit send and it comes directly to me. So that definitely made a huge difference. I will say one of the hardest phases was probably the final workshop, which I did probably a couple months ago, maybe in July. I think we did the final workshop, and the way I did that is I structured it where there was a 1 hour workshop for each of the universities. So 3 students per university. They joined me for an hour virtually to co-create the journey maps. There was some universities where I had a very difficult time finding students, especially summer mouth, as I'm learning, right, is the thing. And so leveraged, again, Gear Up and Lily and other partners who helped us reach out to specific students again there. And then with what I just ended up doing is I ended up scheduling one-on-ones with those students that couldn't make the workshop even after multiple attempts. So, and then sometimes it took rescheduling 3 to 4 times, right? And that's part of it. And then the final piece, and hopefully that answers your question, is incentives. So we did incentivize students for their participation. We had a incentive pool, and we have a platform that's called Tremendous, and it's free. Actually, it's really great. And you can select what type of gift cards you want to be able to distribute. So I would have students respond to their tasks every month. And at the end of the month, I would review who completed which task, and they receive financial gift card incentives for each month. And then in addition, they also, if they completed additional tasks, they could get entered for a $50 gift card as a drawing, kind of to incentivize that in the moment participation. And then the final thing that I think worked really well, and again, this was great partnership with CPE and the Gear Up team as well. We did a tech reward at the completion of phase 1 and the final completion. So any student who was active throughout phase 1 received headphones at the end of phase 1. And then any student who was active also through the end of phase 2 received a gift card in the value of $150 as a completion reward. So I think, the combination of those factors, like making the platform really easy, the reminders were easy to send, and then of course, financial incentive. And I think sorry, I'll make one last point. The workshops I do think are part of the benefit as well, because a lot of times these students have their friends in their small circle that they might talk to about their experiences, but this gives an opportunity to not just think out loud with people from very diverse backgrounds and experiences, but also not vent, but like productively think about, let's think about what could we, what would we do better? What we tell these schools to do differently? And that feels empowering for them and like they're contributing to something meaningful. Great question. I love that question.
That was great. Thank you.
Well, I will just share that there's a lot of next steps with our admissions redesign partnership and project. For the first, we have been actively working with our campus partners to continue exploring the transcript exchange and looking at how we can share from campus to campus at the post-secondary level those dual credit transcripts to remove that barrier for students. We are also, Robin Abear with CPE leads a dual credit strategy, and there's a lot of wonderful work and ongoing partnership there to improve access to dual credit, to enhance advising for dual credit courses, and then hopefully to make that, just really a part of every student's high school experience, because it has such a profound impact on college going. There are, some incredible updates with the Futurity website, which is really a one-stop college access and success website for students in Kentucky. And we're really, leveraging that website to also increase access to scholarship information, to help students explore in-demand career pathways for, choosing a major. And hopefully, just to really proactively communicate those important milestones and steps during their high school journey as they transition to post-secondary. So just so much good work that is still going on, and we'll continue to convene campus partners and our other state agency partners in this work. And Lena, that last slide, just as we close, I want to, really thank so many folks for their incredible support and engagement in this. This student journey mapping project was funded by both the Lumina Foundation as well as the James Graham Brown Foundation. And it was, over 12-month. We really started in April with a pilot project of 4 students that Lena referenced. And that really helped set the tone for our admissions redesign, really design thinking approach. And also then helped us, solidify those partnerships with Student Voice at the center. I want to thank our Gear Up team for all of the time and energy and connections to the students that they helped facilitate, problem solving and just continuing that engagement. It's really incredible that we had almost 50 students that participated in this year-long project. And then also, we're just so thankful for the students and for their voices. And, when you receive your institution-specific journey map, just your students helped create that. So I hope that that is a really big value add to all of our enrollment management offices and our admissions teams, as I know that you are all working so hard and continuing to make the student admissions experience, a real joy. And thank you, Lena, for all of your incredible work. We are going to post, the recording from this webinar, as well as Lena's decks and the treasure trove of video resources and other resources. And of course, everyone will receive, our public universities will receive their custom student journey map as well. But if there's not any other final questions, thoughts, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Feel free to reach out with questions. Take care.